Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on Big Blue View Radio. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel here on YouTube. All right, the Giants 2-10, losers of 7 straight games, face the New Orleans Saints on Sunday with looking for their first home victory of the season. And here to help me, break this game down is Nick Jennings of SB Nation's Canal Street Chronicles. Nick, thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
So let's start with this. The Giants are on a 7-game losing streak. Saints had their own 7-game losing streak this year, 4-8. Not the season that New Orleans had hoped for. Where did it all go wrong? Why did it all go wrong? Did you see this coming for New Orleans this year?
Honestly, if you would have told Who Dat Nation that they would have opened the season with 2 40-plus point blowouts, we would have called you crazy. So I honestly would say that we did expect this to be the case before the season started. However, when those games did happen, expectations did rise, and the Saints looked to be one of the better teams in all of football. So it was definitely a surprise, though, with the amount of significant injuries that New Orleans has faced this season. It is just so hard to overcome. I mean, it all started with Eric McCoy going down just 3 snaps into Week 3's matchup with Philadelphia. He's the heart and soul of the offense. Everything runs through him, and it really threw Derek Carr off. And he also lost his starting right guard in that game as well. And with Taysom dealing with multiple injuries this season, Alvin dealing with injuries, DeMario, Tyran, it's been really difficult for the Saints to overcome, and they just simply don't have enough depth.
McCoy, of course, is was the starting center for the Saints, correct?
Yes, he actually he attempted to play against the Browns, though did end up exiting the game early and was ruled out, and then did not suit up for the game against the Rams. So hopefully he'll be able to practice today and be back out there against the Giants on Sunday.
And I hadn't intended to detour to this one quite so quickly, but since you got into injuries, I looked at this and I have to ask you: is Shane Lemieux actually playing for the Saints? Is he actually in the lineup taking snaps? I mean, that's unheard of.
He is. And look, the Saints have valued him as a backup center this season. And to be quite honest with you, he hasn't been too bad, though you could definitely see Derek Carr did not trust him on Sunday against the Rams. And he was way too quick to get the ball out on various possessions that he really could have let the play develop and found something there. But you know what? The Saints are working with what they got right now. And if McCoy can come back, I really have faith in this offense. It's no coincidence that the first game he came back, the Saints dropped 35-plus points again. Each game that he's played this season, they've dropped 35-plus points in. The offense just runs better with McCoy.
Absolutely. And Lemieux missed some time this year with injuries as well, didn't he? Which seems to be his usual state. At least it was for most of his Giants career.
Yeah, absolutely. He's dealt with a couple things, but nothing too serious. Kept him out a couple games. He did get placed on IR, but look, he's been there for the Saints when they need him, which is, I guess, all that matters right now with the amount of injuries that they've been taking on the offensive line. Derek Carr has taken snaps from 4 different centers this year, so you really can't ask for much more from Lemieux right now.
Wow. I looked and I saw that he played 70 snaps last week, and I was like, wait a minute, that might be more than he's played like in the last 3 or 4 years for the Giants combined.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all.
Yeah, it's crazy. So let me ask you, 7-game losing streak. Saints ended up firing Dennis Allen, putting Darren Rizzi in as the interim head coach. And I have to be honest, I never had a lot of optimism about Dennis Allen as a head coach anyway. Just thoughts on whether you guys saw that move coming. Is it one that the fan base was clamoring for? And in an extension of that, I see, New Orleans 2-1 since Rizzi took over. Just what what has Rizzy brought to the table?
Well, look, Dennis Allen was the fans wanted him gone after last year's loss to the Rams. He's been on the hot seat for quite some time now, and the move should have been made way earlier in the season this year than it was. After the move was made and the Saints won their first game with Darren Rizzi, Saints GM Mickey Loomis actually said you would expect a boost to be provided when a change is made like this. Well, the fans would expect a change to be made when the Saints have lost 4 straight games that they shouldn't have lost. So that's kind of where it was with Dennis Allen. It never felt like he was going to get it together. If you know Dennis Allen, you know he's not a great head coach. I mean, he had 18 and 25 tenure in New Orleans and was 26 and 53 overall in his head coaching career. So he's just not a winner as a head coach. He's a great defensive coordinator. He completely revitalized the Saints defense in 2017 and made it one of the league's best. Though Darren Rizzi has just brought a completely different and refreshing amount of accountability and doing things his own way, which is not what the Saints have done. They've been reluctant to change the ways of the Sean Payton era ever since that has ended. They've tried to just keep everything within the building. They've not looked outside, though Rizzi has made changes that have worked and has done things his own way, and it's proven to work. So, I mean, you really can't ask much more for Rizzi right now with what he's been given to work with. But his passion and his detail is just out of this world difference from Dennis Allen, and it's so refreshing. It really is.
It's funny, I hadn't thought about Dennis Allen in this way, but the Giants had Wink Martindale as defensive coordinator for 2 years. Obviously, issues between Martindale and Brian Daboll, and that partnership dissolved acrimoniously. Giants hired Shane Bowen out of Tennessee, and bluntly, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
That was a mistake. I worried a little bit about Bowen away from Mike Vrabel, who was a defensive-minded head coach. I kind of worried about Bowen on his own, and the Giants. There's a dearth of talent in some spots on that defense, but this defense should be better than it is.
For sure.
I'm just curious. Can you see Dennis Allen resurfacing somewhere next year as a defensive coordinator?
Absolutely. And I don't think it will take long at all. He is highly respected in this league as a defensive play caller. And I mean, his results show that. He literally led one of the best defenses that had been one of the worst defenses for decades. The Saints had one of the worst defenses for years and years and years until Dennis Allen took over. So, yes, I do expect him to get a job relatively quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually went to Denver with Sean Payton. Sean Payton has plucked every former Saint off the roster and brought them over to Denver that he can, including former offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael, who is now his assistant over there in Denver. So, yeah, I definitely expect Dennis Allen to get a job relatively quickly.
Memo to Joe Shane. Check into that. Check into that, Joe. Do that now, quickly. All right, I have to ask you. I want to ask you about a couple of players in particular. First, I mean, you talked about injuries, and the latest big one for New Orleans is Taysom Hill going on IR with a knee injury. Um, how much does that change New Orleans offense? How much does that hurt? What they can do.
Completely changes it. New Orleans is not just losing a tight end in Taysom Hill. They're losing a fullback. They're losing a wide receiver. They're losing a kick returner. They're losing anything that he can play. He is just so valuable to this football team. It's really an unfortunate injury. He really laid his body on the line for this team this year. Played. He missed some time with a fractured rib, with a bruised lung. Came back as quick as he could. You really can't ask for much more. Like, that's really the motto of the Saints right now. You can't ask for much more from the guys that are laying their body on the line for what they've got to work with. But yeah, the offense completely different with Taysom Hill. When Taysom's in the game, he's one of the most dynamic ball carriers in the NFL. How he's managed to become that at 34 years old, I do not know. But he finished the season with 278 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns on just 39 attempts, and an 89.9 rushing grade from Pro Football Focus. So when you put the ball in his hands, he's going to get something done. He's completely lethal in the screen game. if you get the ball in his hands, he will make something happen. So it really hurts the offense.
All right. So I need to ask you, if I don't know if you watched the off-season version of Hard Knocks with the Giants, but they clearly admitted that, they entered the offseason after trading Leonard Williams last year. They entered the offseason with 2 picks in the second round, 39 and 47. They traded the 39th overall pick to get Brian Burns, and no Giants fan should complain about that ever. Brian Burns, a terrific player, terrific leader in that locker room. But what that did, they also clearly admitted that they were targeting cornerback in round 2. And one of the 2 players they were targeting was Kool-Aid McKinstry. And of course, the Saints took McKinstry before the Giants pick at 47, when the Giants took Tyler Nubin, who's a really good safety, by the way. But I'm just curious what McKinstry has brought to the Saints, what you think of his future. Was that a good pick for New Orleans? And would he look good in blue?
Hey, Kool-Aid McKinstry would look good anywhere, to be honest with you. I think it was a great pick for New Orleans, especially following the Marshawn Lattimore trade that's been brewing for some time now. Lattimore has been dealing with various injuries that have kept him off the field, and that hamstring especially. So this has just been, especially with 2 years on his contract, due $36.5 million. The Saints were going to take a corner this draft. And the fact that Kool-Aid dropped them was just a blessing, because he has really emerged since the trade. He had some trouble early in the season adjusting to the NFL level competition, but once he got his feet settled, missed some time with an injury, but came back, embraced his starting role, has taken over that covering the top wide receivers. Him and Alontae Taylor, who's moved back out to the outside. They're starting to develop into a really good tandem out there on the outside. The Saints have to find someone in the nickel now that Alontae Taylor has moved outside.
So he is technically cornerback 1 for the Saints now.
I'd say they split it up, because Alontae Taylor, they're going to play him where they know he can make plays. Alontae, I'm not sure about where he's at right now, but I know last week he was still leading the league in havoc plays, disrupted plays. So he's going to make a play on the ball. And if they feel that they can take the advantage of the Giants by putting him in the slot, then they will do that. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible that you see Kool-Aid on Malik Neighbors, but Alontae Taylor has really grown into one of the better defensive backs on the Saints roster. So I would expect Alontae to get more of that cornerback 1 look, but Kool-Aid is certainly growing into that role.
I did, as I look at Kool-Aid's numbers, I see one stat where he most definitely would fit in the Giants secondary. He does not have an interception yet this season. So, and,
yeah.
And the Giants, I don't know if you're aware of this, the Giants have 1 interception all year long.
Yeah, by a linebacker, correct?
By a linebacker in week 1. They don't have an interception all year from a defensive back, and they're now on an NFL record 11-game streak of not having an interception. It's Nick, the scary part of that is they haven't come close to one. Actually, on Thanksgiving Day, Adoree Jackson had 2 hands on a football. He had 2 hands on a deep throw and couldn't catch it, which, if anybody remembers Adoree Jackson's college days, he played some wide receiver and some and cornerback at USC.
Yeah, so you'd expect him to be the one to come down with it, right?
No, we've seen Adoree Jackson drop enough footballs over the last few years to understand completely why he's a cornerback.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so there is that. I want to ask you, when we did our 5 questions this week, which, by the way, should appear actually is already up on Big Blue View as of Wednesday morning. I asked you about Spencer Rattler.
Yeah,
and the Giants passed on quarterback at number 6, and nobody's ever going to say Malik Neighbors, wasn't a good pick. He's a terrific player, but there's still an argument to be made that the Giants should have taken J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or Bo Nix or one of those guys, because they're still looking for their quarterback of the future.
Absolutely.
I was a guy who, in mock draft after mock draft after mock draft, selected Spencer Rattler for the Giants in the 3rd round, 4th round. The Giants obviously decided not to take Rattler, not to take a quarterback at all. New
Yeah.
Orleans took him in round 5. He's played a little bit. Just what have you guys seen from Rattler? And do you think he's a viable, eventually, maybe not right now, but eventually, is he a viable starting quarterback in the NFL?
Look, I truly think so. Like, his arm talent is clear as day. He's got the intangibles to be a starting quarterback in this league. With Spencer, it's more mindset thing. Though no moment is too big for him, which I do appreciate about Spencer. But yeah, he brought a completely new dynamic to this offense. Ever since the departure of Drew Brees, the Saints really haven't had that kind of, I guess, pinpoint accuracy quarterback, even though that is one of the areas that Spencer can improve. Tends to sail a bit high on some short and intermediate passes. His accuracy is much better than Derek Carr's is when it comes to short and intermediate passes, though I would say Derek's deep ball kind of edges him out there. But I think the zip on some of Spencer's throws is completely new for the Saints offense. Some of the receivers actually had to adjust to it when Spencer took over. They had dropped some passes in practice. He zips that thing, man. He can throw that ball. But yeah, and he's good on his feet. He can run, and the Saints have not had that. Besides Taysom's brief stint as a starting quarterback in 2021, there's been nobody that can really be mobile for the Saints in the backfield at the quarterback position. So it was definitely refreshing to see that. But I would 100% be down to give Spencer Rattler a season as starting quarterback, especially next season when the Saints aren't going to figure it out next season. It's going to take some time. So why not give him a shot? If it works, it works. If not, you try in the next one.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have asked you that question. That might just be another thing for Giants fans to be annoyed about.
Yeah, he's definitely a very intriguing prospect, for sure. I will say that.
Let me ask you, 4-8, you said tons of injuries. Obviously, a lot like the Giants, the Saints are playing out the string at this point. Look at the roster, look at the way things are with the Saints, and what can you feel good about with New Orleans, going through the end of the season and going into next year?
Well, I'm liking what I'm seeing from the receivers that are actually given the opportunity right now. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has 4 touchdowns in the 4 games that he's played in, tying Dante Stallworth as the only other Saint to do so. So he is really impressed. He's been that safety blanket for Derek Carr despite not spending much time on the field together. And look, I would love to have him back next season behind Shaheed and Olave. I feel like that would be one of the more lethal wide receiver trios in the NFL. Definitely one of the fastest. And I like what I've seen from Kevin Austin Jr. as well. He's made the most of his opportunity, came from the UFL, spent the training camp with New Orleans, and was called up in week 10 from the practice squad following Chris Olave's injury, and then against the Brown following Rashid Shaheed's injury. So he's really stepped up. He's always there. He seems like he's always in position to make a play, and he's been clutch for New Orleans. He had 3 clutch first downs for them on Sunday.
All right, last thing for you, Nick. How do you see Sunday unfolding? I did a piece the other day at Big Blue View where I looked at the Giants' remaining 5 games. Like I said, they're 0-6 at home. They've lost 7 games in a row. I look at their schedule, and I can't pick the Giants to win this game, but I look at it as perhaps the most winnable game left on their schedule.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how you see this unfolding.
Look, if the Saints can do what they did last season against the Giants and get those 7 sacks again, then I would got to take the Saints. But I just don't see that happening. I see this being probably 21-14. I'm going to go with the Saints just because obviously 2 bad teams got to roll with the one I cover. You know what I mean? But
of course.
That's really the only reason in there, because this is going to be ugly. It's not going to be a good looking football game. It's going to be a lot of running the football as well, because these are 2 of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL.
Just out of curiosity, how well do Saints fans travel?
They travel well. They travel well. Apparently, Jeff Ireland and Mickey Loomis don't believe so because when they had training camp in Irvine, California this offseason, they didn't allow fans because they didn't think enough would show up. But they travel pretty well. I can say that a lot of the away games, whether it be the Chargers, they've packed the stadiums.
Oh, just another week where we'll be looking out from the press box and looking at a ton of jerseys that aren't blue or
Yeah.
aren't white, that aren't Giants colors.
Hey, I wouldn't doubt if there wasn't many Saints ones there either. They're fed up right now.
All right. Hey, Nick, I appreciate the time. Giants fans, check out Canal Street Chronicles if you want the Saints perspective on Sunday. And thank you, as always, for watching. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.